Hi there. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. This week is a super fun episode. We do a Halloween special. So we go in and we talk about some fun experiences and stories that are a bit spooky, but then we pull it back and we kind of talk about life on the other side and really what they're trying to tell you. And we have some firsthand experience from the three of us, of course, as we do talk to people on the other side. So grab your coffee and your cozy blanket and enjoy this week's Halloween special of Spirit Coffee Talk. Have a great week. Hey everyone, welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. Myself, Elyse, and Ginette, we meet every week on Friday and drink coffee and talk all things spirit and whatever's going on in life. So welcome everybody to this Halloween edition of Spirit Coffee Talk. Woo! So we're gonna kind of dive in and just see how it goes. I think everybody's kind of in the kind of Halloweeny mood, but we thought, hey, if we're talking spirit, we're talking to people on the other side, we can kind of have a Halloween edition because there's a plenty of info that we might have on the subject. So, ladies, have you guys had any like experiences or anything that's more Halloweeny than like mediumship? Like, can you feel the difference?
So I had this whole conversation with my kids the other day about haunted houses because there's someone that does a great haunted house kind of like up the road
Yeah.
and like they go all out, right? And you can go through this whole thing. And my kids are like, we should go check that out. I was like, yeah, if you guys want to, go for it. I will not go in there. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh no, I do not go near haunted houses. And they're like, why? Because of spirits? I'm like, no, because they're so scary. And they're like, what? I'm like, I would rather go into a real haunted house, like an actual haunted location. I would feel more comfortable there than in a fake Halloween haunted house because, and we talked about this and figured it out. If I go into a haunted building, I can at least feel stuff, see what's going on. Whereas in those haunted houses, you can't because they're
Yeah.
3D things and things jump out. So they are terrifying. The last time I went into a haunted house was when my husband and I were dating. Trevor and I went in this haunted house, and I was like, "Okay, I can do this. I can do this." This was like 20 years ago, last time. I'm like, I can do it. We go in, and as soon as we hit the like smoke and the eerie music, I like jumped into his jacket and walked the whole time with my face in his armpit
Gosh,
because I
that's
couldn't handle it.
that is hilarious.
Not
I'm
haunted houses.
also very terrified of haunted houses. Have you guys ever done like fright nights, like in
Oh, I
Vancouver?
can't.
No, my brother used to do that. Have you ever done that, Elise?
Well, what do you mean by that exactly?
Like there's like it's in Vancouver. I guess you're in Edmonton, but like in Vancouver they do this thing called fright nights, and you go and it's like I think it's at the exhibition grounds.
Yeah, the peony.
Yeah, and they just have it like just the scariest things that you could possibly imagine put together in a night, and you just go there to literally terrify yourself.
Yeah.
Like that makes me want to barf. Like
I can't handle it. No, I can't
can't
handle it.
handle scary stuff. I can't handle scary movies. My daughter, she's like almost 14. She showed me a trailer for a movie. I'm like, I can't finish that. Like, I can't watch. What are you trying to do to me? Like, I'm gonna throw up. She's like, you talk to ghosts. And I was exactly the same as you. And I'm like, yeah, but I can control that. Like, that is something where I'm like, okay, I can feel this, or I can like whatever. That is like freaky deaky stuff, man.
Yeah. I don't know. But
So,
at least you have better tolerance for that though.
do you like scary
Oh,
movies?
so I'm strange. And as you guys were talking, I was like putting the pieces together and I'm like, maybe this is what it is. Because so I have a tendency to like in my physical self, how would I say this? Like, trying to figure out the words. Okay, so I'll just talk you through it. So going to like haunted houses and things like that, like the fun, Halloweeny ones or whatever. it scares me. I'm always the one that gets put in the front, like always. I'm always the one that like tries to logic my way through it. And even in life, there's certain times, like not ghost wise, but just like that was a dumb, unsafe decision, Elyse. I do it. Like it's like I can't think. And I've now put it, I'm gonna just say that I feel like it's like a past life version of myself that like it's like I can take no shit. I'm not scared. Come at me. And I like have this energy about me that can come through like that. And I feel like sometimes that's what happens with haunted houses, with things like that. I remember one time this person who's no longer in my life decided that they were going to show up at my house one night and pretend to break in and be like a murderer. And rather than run away,
Funny.
it wasn't funny. They're not in my life for a reason anymore. Um, and then this wasn't even when I was like woo or anything. So they were trying to like break into my house, and I was in the basement with my roommate at the time. And they were like jiggling the door, and we were like, what is that noise? And then we like came upstairs and saw that the front door, somebody was at it and was trying to like pick the lock and whatever. And it was late at night. I lived in kind of a neighborhood that it was like pretty quiet, but right on the river valley. So just not a lot of people around, like if something was to happen. And rather than like go run and hide and call 911, I ran at the door and like threw myself onto it. And I was like, my roommate, I was like, call 911, I've got this. I don't know what I thought I was going to do if it was like an axe murderer.
Your reaction is fight.
It is. It's 100% fight. And I've done it in multiple occasions where like after the fact, I'm like, that wasn't smart. You shouldn't have done that. So all to say though, haunted houses, things like that, they get my adrenaline going, but I'm always the one in the front and I'm like, it's fine. And I get that like fight energy. Yeah. However, I hate it in my own house. So like watching scary movies at home, I don't like it when I'm already in my peaceful place. So like right. John loves horror movies and scary movies, and he loves them. He grew up on them though. Like he was raised by his uncles, and they started him watching The Exorcist when he was like 5. So that's just
so his tolerance
is super low.
Tolerance where I feel like you, Elyse, back in the day, like my teenage self and my like younger 20 self, it was almost like that kick of adrenaline did something for me. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I'm like, it takes me too long to come back down from it, that I'm like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's in my peaceful space, like watching the movies and I don't like it because it just makes me feel unnerved, and the same thing, I have a hard time like coming down from it. Yeah. But I can like rise to the occasion for a haunted house. And
so have you guys ever had any like really gnarly haunted experiences? Like not like play haunted house, but like real life haunted house? Yeah. Okay, let's get into it.
For sure. I one time was in a actual haunted house. It was like a historic house in Toronto. And we were walking through it, and they were talking about the history of the house. And I remember I was like, I could feel spirits and I could see them, right? But I'm like, I'm comfortable with this. But I actually walked through a spirit. And I remember it was like walking through almost Jello. If you could picture, if you walked through Jello, and it was like, and then out the other side.
That's like,
I remember it was like,
stuff.
Yeah. And I was like, what was that? Like, obviously it was all iridescent and clear, and it's not like it left Jello on me. But that experience was interesting because I was just a random spirit, right? So those kinds of things were cool. But the haunting kinds, I have seen like some dark beings sometimes where, like in Hollywood movies, that they like to embellish this, where like the face kind of like opens, and spirits, when they're trying to do a haunting thing to create a fear, can pull from all kinds of imagery that we've seen before to show us that, right? And if you're not aware of that, that can be terrifying.
Yeah.
Luckily, that happened at a time where I was like, whoa, no thanks, right? Like I could catch it enough to be like, no thanks, but it caught me off guard for sure.
Since I've been able to, like, since I've gotten into like mediumship and actually like now that I communicate, and I choose to communicate with only the highest like frequency, now that I've learned that. But like back in the day when I used to see them without wanting to see them, I was seeing them on like a 4th dimensional kind of frequency, that's like density and like but that's when they always showed them to me, and I didn't have the knowledge at that point of like, no, go away kind of thing. It's like, yeah, as if like, leave me alone, I know exactly what you're doing. It was just like, guy, like, why me? Why me? And my cat is this my very first house I ever lived in after high school. I moved into this house with my roommates, and my roommate brought home a Ouija board. And
Oh,
I gotta say to anybody listening, like, that is actually an invitation to invite unwanted spirits in your life.
yeah.
Coming from this, do not do it. Like, don't.
Don't mess with Ouija boards.
No, don't. It's just
Don't.
like it's a real thing. Don't mess with it. Don't bring it into your house. And if you have one in your house, get rid of it now and then smudge your house.
Burn it. You have to burn them to get rid of them too.
Yeah.
You have to, yeah.
So, okay, so we're playing with this Ouija board, and the turny knob thing that you're supposed to hold on to starts spinning in one spot. No one's holding on to it. It's just like, right? And then after that, they were everywhere. It was like that created some kind of like opening,
No?
yeah, portal in my basement. And then there's this woman that showed up on the foot of my bed. And exactly what you said, Ginette, I woke up, my cat and I like woke up, and then she was at the end of the bed and she was like looking over me, and then she went, "Ah!" And she opened her mouth like so big like that, like to scream. And my cat's like, right? I'm like, no, it's in the middle of the night. And then I'm like, how do you go back from that? Like, how do you go back to bed? How do you go back to sleep? You know what I mean? So needless to say, I didn't. And then, I mean, that was like before the days of just like grabbing my laptop and like putting on a movie. Like, it was way back in the day. So it was just so scary. And then I had to bring somebody in to smudge my house because I didn't know how to do it at the time. And I mean, that was like the beginning of it for me at that stage in my life. Like, I was university, right? I didn't have like the healthiest lifestyles, and I didn't hang out with like salt of the earth probably. So it was like I invited that in a lot, and I had a lot of like really yucky experiences, and I think that is what like heightened my fear of like haunted houses and like
Yeah.
hauntings, because it was in a time where I was like totally uncontrolled, like it was not controllable. But now every time I go into like a hotel, right? Because like people bring energy with them. There's spirits everywhere, right? I always smudge my hotel room every single time before you go in. You smudge everywhere. You know what I mean? Like when we traveled, same thing. Like you have to clear all the spaces.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty freaky deaky in those times.
But isn't it funny though? Like, it's basically a lower frequency trying to get attention.
Okay, so then
That's
that's
the
what I think
thing.
to talk about is explaining to people what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had in a house, I was renting different houses for a long time, and I was living in this one house where we didn't really know the backstory of it. We later found out, but it was an older house in an older neighborhood of Edmonton, and it was the owner of the house. She was in a nursing home, and it was her granddaughter who was renting it out to, different tenants. And so she was our landlord, and then the grandma, the lady who actually owned the house, she was in a nursing home. And it was like a beautiful house. They had kind of renovated. It was like just a little teeny tiny thing. And the upstairs felt really good. And then you go down into the basement, and it was just one of those like,
like, feel the change of
yeah, like I can even just feel it on the back of my neck now. It was just that feeling like, oh boy. And it was really like old looking too. It hadn't been renovated at all. It had like the wood paneling walls, like the old, like kind of torn up tiles. There was a like creepy sauna room that wasn't connected. And I was like, well, I'm never going in there because that just feels like some sort of torture room. And it was just like an old, whatever, gross kind of basement. And I'd gone down there plenty of times, and you always just get like a bit of a weird feeling. And I remember this one time we had like our little home gym set up down there, and I walked downstairs and I was like using the weights and da da da. And there was also they had built in a cold storage into one of the walls, which is amazing. So it was just like a little, not one that you could go into, but just like a little pantry kind of cold storage thing. So I remember one time I was doing my workout and I was down there, and I just felt like I was being watched. And then I was like, okay, whatever. And so then I finished up, and then I was like, oh, I got to grab something from the cold storage. So I opened it up, grabbed the thing, and then I closed it, and I could see someone out of my peripheral. And it was this man. He probably looked in his, I don't know, I would say like 50s, but like back from the 50s or like 60s sort of thing. He had like overalls and this brown kind of flannelly looking shirt on. And I saw him turn around, and he had this giant gun. And I was like, it just freaked me out. And he was like stone cold, like just looking at me. And I was like, ugh. And it was earlier on in my like tuned in days. So it freaked me out. And I ran upstairs and I was like, what the hell?
That would still freak me out.
Yeah. And like, he didn't say anything or do anything like that, but it just was like, hey, here's a giant, it was like a rifle, like a hunting rifle. And I was like, that's creepy. And so I just went upstairs and kind of like calmed myself down. And then I like, okay, I'm going to go back downstairs. I'm going to sage the basement, sage the house, all that good stuff. And kind of clear everything out. And I said some prayers and whatnot. And it felt like he wasn't as present, but I could still feel him there. And I was like, okay, there's something with this. And after I kind of like settled my own like startle down, I realized like, okay, he's not pesky. He's just around. So like, I'm just going to let him be. And then, gosh, I think that would have been in like March. In April or May, I think, we were told, we hadn't even lived there a year. We were told by the landlord that they were selling the house because the owner, the grandma, passed away. And the husband had already passed. And so then they were going to get rid of the house because they were just holding on to it until she had passed. And so after we had some conversations back and forth, and it was the grandpa, and the room, there was this really creepy, like red room in the basement. And when she lived there, they had her down in that room, and that's where he was hanging out all the time. And then as soon as she passed away, we lived there for probably another 2 months while we were looking for something else. And as soon as she passed away, he was gone. Like the energy was gone. He was just waiting for her, but it scared the shit out of me at first. Wow. And then, but it's a great example too of like, it's startling, especially when they're in that kind of lower energy, and you can feel that like when you walk into the room, that like kind of feeling on the back of your neck. And he was just waiting for his wife and like not ready to fully cross over. He could have, maybe he didn't realize that he could have waited for her over there, but he waited, and then he was gone after she passed away. Yeah.
Well, like one of the most, if anyone can take something from what we're talking about, because what we're doing is not trying to scare people, but it's actually
to explain, Ginette, what they are, like where they come from and what energy frequency they're hanging out in and why they're there.
Yeah, exactly. Because the biggest PowerPoint, and I'll get into that, the biggest PowerPoint that every person watching this though is you do not have to take it, right? Whatever is happening, you can stop it. You can change the frequency. You do not have to just take what's happening. You can respond, and love is honestly the highest response frequency. Now, that's not easy when you're faced with something freaky, but if you can consciously catch it and be like, no, I'm actually going to send you a lot of love because whatever it is you're going through, you need some extra good vibes, right? Because what happens is most spirits that are going to communicate with you aren't there to haunt you at all, most of them. So let's say like 95% of spirits are not there to be rude, pesky, freaky. They're trying to get an attention, or they are still earthbound, like this guy waiting for his wife, right? When spirits are in a low frequency, right, like slow moving waves of frequency versus our 3D waves of frequency, right? Otherwise, spirits up here are moving really, really fast. When they're there in the low frequency and they come up to try and communicate, they have to try and get your attention, because most of the time they need your help. And so they're going to try and get your attention in ways that they know how, which sometimes is flicking lights on and off, because they can manipulate energy easy because it has a frequency and a current. Sometimes it's knocking something off the shelf because they can manage to get the energy to force something off a shelf. Sometimes it's manifesting an image, but sometimes manifesting that image, they have to take everything they have and go whoosh and make an image appear. And sometimes that image is like, and it disappears. Because it's like when we jump in the air, right? It's the same as us jumping in the air. If we want to jump as high as we can, we jump, but usually in the jump, our faces aren't like pristine and beautiful. They're like, because you're putting all this force to be up in the air. So spirit is putting force out to show an image, which is often also why they don't have feet sometimes, or they're floating. They can only push out so much into 3D to get our
attention. They work very hard to be able to be seen. So if you can actually if you can actually see one or have seen one, then it's like they've worked very hard on the frequency to be able to be seen by you.
Get your attention. So the best thing you can do if something like this happens, if you just don't want to deal with it at all, you can stop and lovingly but firmly say, I'm not interested. No, thank you. And then you're done there for the most part.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted, you could say, what do you
What do
need?
you need?
Do you need help? Because even when I've seen spirits that are, trying to look scary or trying to look burly or this or blah, 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 what they're trying to do is get my attention. When I stop and I say, do you need some help? Can I help you? Then it's like they instantly go like, and they
Yeah.
transform into the person they were.
It changes. Yeah.
Like, I've seen something that looked like this weird, hairy werewolf type 12-foot tall thing. When I stopped and was like, do you need something? It turned into this woman. And she was like, I am so lost. I am so lost. Can you help me? And I was like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she just.
I've had that too, where they're literally asking if you can help them to move on.
Yeah.
Like, I am lost. I am lost. I'm lost. Help me move on. Help me move to this place of light. So one little one, it was a child actually, said like this, where's the place of light? Where is it? It was like a little lost soul. And I'm like, oh, I'll show you.
And I feel like that's one of the things
really hard, but
yeah, I think that's one of the things that like Hollywood and movies get so wrong, and why we tend to have those really strong fearful reactions is because in movies, like, great, fine, if that's the entertainment you enjoy, cool, all the power to you. And know that just as majority of other movies, like, do you think Tom Cruise might be not in a good example because he does do all of his stunts and he's a weird superhuman, but like the James Bond movies, like, do you think all of that is exactly how it plays out in real life when there's like, an assassin somewhere? Probably not. Yeah. So, but we tend to think with like hauntings and ghost things that it is like that. And one series, like, I know the three of us have talked about this, one series that I really actually love for this is, it's a Netflix series that they kind of come out. There was The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and then they just did a recent one, Midnight Mass. And they're quite scary, and they're not scary, they're suspenseful. They're not like some of those movies, and I won't ruin the endings, but I will say that they do a beautiful job of, once you kind of understand towards the end what's going on, it always comes back to love. And it's like, it takes you through this like very human perspective of like the fear that we feel if we were in a situation like that. And then how love, like when you have that lens of love, it completely transforms the situation and actually what you're seeing, feeling, and perceiving with these scary things.
And then the energy changes, and that really actually happens. Like Ginette, you were saying, when you are, and if you ever are in the situation where you are seeing it like a spirit, or you can just feel it, and you can feel that energy. I think there's a lot of people who know, like, if they go in there, like, I just know, like, I can just feel it. Try and come into the frequency of just love, like hold your open-hearted love, and it really does help change the frequency. Or when in doubt, wrap yourself in white light. And
knowing you're safe there, like that is safety, and you get to turn it on anytime. Like, you are safe when you wrap yourself in love and white light. Like, that's the same as running under a blanket and hiding.
Totally. Wrap yourself in white light. If you wake up overnight and you're scared from a dream, or you've heard something and you're like, I don't know, love, wrap yourself in white light, and then have that frequency of love in the white light, and it works. That's like, somebody taught me that, and that's my go-to.
And you can set really beautiful boundaries too, like, say it's within your own home. Recently, I had an energy that wasn't necessarily trying to find the light, but was just, having some fun. Their fun, not so much our fun. Knocked a picture off the wall at like 11 p.m. and like startled us, right? Even, as people who are tuned in, it's like, it's still startling when those things happen. It's not like, oh, no big deal. When a picture flies off the wall at 11 p.m. And there were some other things happening, and I could just feel myself being followed and like things going missing. And it was like, okay, enough. And I tried a few things, and I actually called in a friend of yours, Ginette, Kevin, to like help clear the space on a little bit of a deeper level, because my own clearing practices weren't really getting it done. But the one thing, it was kind of like all over our main floor, up the stairs, it just felt icky. But I and I was having a hard time clearing it in my own practices, but I was like, you are not welcome in my bedroom, period. And it was like every time I would close my bedroom door when I would go to sleep, I would like imagine it as if there was like a big wall, like a big boundary that they could not cross. And the energy never came in my bedroom, not once.
Yeah.
Even though it was, screwing with things all over the house, bedroom. So you can always, even if it's like loved ones and you're like, please just don't stand over my bed at the end of the night, because it terrifies me when I wake up and see grandma, say, grandma, love you. Maybe show yourself to me during the day, or not in my bedroom.
Not at nighttime, but that's when the veil is thinner. Okay, let's leave it off with, what is your all-time favorite Halloween movie?
Ooh.
I'll go first. Practical Magic.
Oh, that's
book, and what's her name? The one that's in everything now.
Kidman is in that, right?
Nicole Kidman, yes. If you haven't seen Practical Magic, that is the number one
great movie.
It's such a good movie.
How about you, Elyse?
I don't watch a lot of Halloween specific movies unless John makes me watch his stupid horror movies that I don't watch. I watch like this. So the first thing that came to mind for me was like the OG Casper.
Oh, yeah.
Like Christina Ricci and Devin Sawa, and he was like,
yes.
And the little boy ghost
was like such a crush of mine when I
was with like the three little jerk uncle ghosts that were just such douches. Yeah,
I loved that movie.
So
that's a good one, Elyse. Yeah. Great one. What about you, Ginette?
I think I'm gonna go with The Corpse Bride, or like Nightmare Before Christmas. I know that's Christmas, but to me that's Halloween-y.
Yeah.
Like the Tim Burton stuff. I like that because it's very theatrical. And it creates like its own realm of its own, like it's own realm. And I think that's why for me I could handle it when I was younger, because it wasn't real people.
Yeah.
It wasn't cartoons. So yeah, I think that was.
My kids love Hotel Transylvania too. Have you guys ever?
Oh yes, of course. Those.
It's hilarious. Yeah. Actually, I was like, it's so funny.
It is really funny.
Why can't I think of anybody's name? What's a funny
guy?
Adam Sandler does the guy's voice. It's so funny.
He's Dracula.
Really funny. John and I'll watch that this weekend. He'll want to watch Halloween.
There's three of them.
And they're really funny. They're cartoons, but they're like super funny.
I love cartoons.
Me too. I love cartoons too. Yeah. Okay, well then that wraps it up for this Halloween special edition of Spirit Coffee Talk. Again, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions, comments, comment below, share, like, subscribe, all this stuff. And I hope that everyone has just a magical, amazing Halloween weekend. And we'll see you next week.
Happy Halloween.
Bye.